What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Casual Big Ten Podcast. Today is Friday, June 23rd. I wrote 22nd on the screen, but it is the 23rd. We're one day after the NBA draft, and today on the show, we will be discussing the NBA draft. Last week was the first week that I've missed doing a podcast for a really long time, so I promised two, but what I didn't tell everybody is that I actually have a guest on today, and joining us now is Matt Lukens. He is Matt Portland on Twitter. He is a contributor to the Indiana HQ account, and he is also a co-host of the Big Ten Coast to Coast podcast. Matt, thank you so much for coming on today.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Kent. It's always nice to pick other people's brains about college basketball. I just enjoy shooting the stuff with other people, talking sports. So I feel free to always ask me to have me on because it's always so much fun just to sit here and talk with anybody.
I love it too, man, because I've been interviewing a lot of people this month about, preseason football stuff and all that stuff's coming up. But at my heart, I love basketball even more. So I'm glad that we can take a step back and talk hoops right now, man.
Absolutely.
All right, so today we're going to talk a little bit about who got drafted, the 7 guys that got drafted out of the Big Ten. Before we do that, though, I do want to talk a little bit about what you do, though. On your Twitter, it says you're a contributor for the Indiana HQ. I'm not going to lie, I'm not positive what that is. I do know what Big Ten Coast to Coast is. I've listened to that show many times. So tell everybody a little bit about what you do and kind of what got you into doing this in the first place.
It's a whole funny story how I got into doing this, but basically the quick synopsis, so we're not here for 30 minutes, is that I was once dating this girl, and she had a bunch of other roommates, and all the guys would just end up in the common room together talking sports instead of hanging out with our girlfriends. So our girlfriends got together, put their brains together, and were like, hey, just do a podcast so you don't end up doing that. And that is how the Hoosier Sound and then Indiana HQ was born. And I did that for a couple of years and then brought on Ant Wright. Then I, played a couple of games of Among Us with him, and now I have a podcast with him. That's how Big Ten Coast to Coast was born. So thanks to my ex-girlfriend and Among Us.
I was just going to say, any story that starts out with I was dating this girl and then kind of ends with Among Us, man, that's a great story.
Yeah, so it's fun. It's been a very windy road, but now I feel like there's a straight path on this, and I just enjoy waking up every morning and just talking sports to everybody.
Well, you're a great follow on Twitter. For anyone that's watching on YouTube, his Twitter account is right there, right in front of his name. It's at MDLukens101. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Making sure I got that right for you. But let's jump into this, man. I don't want to keep you all night. Let's talk about the Big Ten guys that got drafted yesterday. I'm going to try not to go crazy right now because on my last show I said, and I tweeted about it a million times, and I'm not mad about it. I'm upset that I was wrong, but I thought, and I still believe in my heart, that Jet Howard should have never been drafted in the first place. I said that he should definitely not be the first Big Ten player drafted. And then last night the show comes on, and I said he should never sniff the top 10. These are all things that I said, and he did everything that I said he shouldn't be doing. He got picked number 11. He's going to Orlando. The Orlando Magic have such a hard-on for Michigan players. I don't know what's happening with that. And Jet is going to the Magic, and the Orlando Magic will have another losing season next year. What are your thoughts about how high he got drafted? Why? I just don't. I don't fully understand it. Can you please talk me off the ledge?
No, in fact, I'm going to send you more off the ledge. I don't understand it either, to be honest with you. And it's funny enough, I was in a playback.tv last night with Ant. I was working, but also had it on because I work the front desk at the hotel here in Zion National Park. So I had it on a separate tab. I was tabbing forth, and I was away from the computer. I come back and Jet Howard pick 11. I was like, what? It's just it's actually legitimately the only situation that I don't like for the player. Out of all the 7 guys drafted for the Big Ten last night, he might be the only situation I don't like. They already have another Michigan small forward on the roster. You have 2 way better shooting guards. If you're going to even want to play them at the 2, way better 2 guards already on the roster. You have You just drafted Anthony Black, who's like a 6'8" point guard. So he's going to play on that wing position, but handle the ball. So he's not going to play with him either. It's like, why why draft him? I don't understand. And then you already have like a billion Michigan guys there, anyways. You have the Wagner brothers, and now you have him, and it's like I just personally I don't understand it from Orlando's perspective. I thought it was a reach. I think Orlando probably could have traded down and got him at like 18, 19 even. I wasn't one of those guys that didn't think he was going to get drafted. I thought he was going to get drafted just based off of potential alone because there's serious potential there, right? But the way he played at Michigan after the first 4 games and after that first preseason game was extremely uninspiring to everyone, including Michigan fans who didn't want him playing and thought the team was better when he wasn't playing,
They were.
right? They were, right? Like statistically, they were better on offense and defense when he was not playing. Were they more fun to watch? No, but that's a whole other issue. So I'm surprised. I personally thought Kobe Buffkin was going to be the first Big Ten player drafted because I thought he has the highest potential out of all the Big Ten players. I think he has even higher potential than Jet, his own teammate. But I just think it was wild the situation and the pick that he got drafted at last night.
I'll never not be confused about it. I don't know why they did it. I do want to talk about Kobe. He's obviously the next guy that got picked. But before we do that, you mentioned his defense and Michigan's defensive stats when he wasn't there. That was one of the most frustrating things to watch. As I used to coach high school basketball, so like I was big on defense. I couldn't stand watching Jet Howard on defense. I think that I could probably put together like a 20-minute mixtape of him missing assignments, being in the wrong spot, not doing what he's supposed to do defensively. And I just don't understand how Orlando or any NBA scouts missed that part of it. I guess they're just so focused on his offensive potential, as you were saying. Were you seeing the same thing I was seeing this year, or am I crazy?
No, his defense was to the point, like it was so frustrating to a point that I genuinely hope he was just injured, right? And trying to play through injury, right? Like because it was lackadaisical at best.
Yeah, I agree.
There was like no effort. There was no effort put into it at all. And it's like you're playing for your dad at your dad's alma mater at a place that's supposed to love you, and your dad's name should be hanging in the rafters, right? Like you should be putting effort on every single play. And it felt like when he was on defense, he was putting maybe 10% in.
Yeah, it was really
Maybe.
confusing. It was very, very confusing. He cost them some games this year, and I just don't really see I don't see the pick. I obviously knew he was going to get drafted. I read enough to know that he was going to get drafted. I just saw him. I also saw him play defense a lot last year, and I felt like if you only looked at that, there's no way he should have been. But I understand he does have offensive potential. A guy that did play defense for Michigan last year, though, was Kobe. He was the next guy that got drafted. Probably, like you were saying, should have been maybe the first guy in the Big Ten. I thought it should have been Jalen Hood Shafino should have been the first pick from the Big Ten, but Kobe ends up going number 15 to Atlanta. I'm not a big NBA guy. I don't know what Atlanta has. Is he going to play right away, or is that a roster that he's going to be coming off the bench and will be playing years down the road?
No, he's gonna be coming off the bench. I think Atlanta has a pretty loaded roster at all spots. Honestly, they really underperformed last year. Again, that was a team that was, I believe, in the East Finals 2 years ago, and then go to last year. I don't even think they made the playoffs, which is, or they made the play-in games, I believe, and ended up not making the playoffs. Um, no, they made the playoffs. They're like a low seed. Either way, they underperformed this year, regardless of whatever happened in the regular season. I Kobe is not going to play significant minutes for that team, but that staff and that organization develops players.
Okay.
So that's why I like that spot for him. He's going to get playing time off the bench, probably to replace Trey Young when he comes out, or to replace somebody like a Bogdanovich, which will be really nice for him because then he gets to experience not only being a point guard but also being the secondary ball handler
Mm-hmm.
um, on that team, and they can kind of figure out which role is best for him. When I look at Kobe, I see a guy that, again, he's a versatile defender. He's a versatile player on offense. He can do a lot. There's a lot of potential there. He went from a freshman year that was extremely frustrating to watch to him being probably not probably their second best player on that team last year behind
Mm-hmm.
Hunter, bar none. Um, and their best like perimeter player by far. Um, and you're looking at a guy that I think has all-star potential, and a guy that could be a two-way player, which I think is something that Atlanta really needs when you're partnering with a Trae Young, right? Whose
Yeah.
defense, again, you're speaking of really good offensive players and really bad defensive players, not by Trae Young's any fault of his own. Like Trae Young tries on defense. It's just that he's small and gets pushed around a lot. So you need a guard that can be kind of play a little bit bigger than his size and disrupt with length, and that's what Kobe can do.
I'm gonna skip over what I forgot to hit the slide when I had Jet last night shaking hands with the commissioner, and then I have Kobe up right now. I'm gonna skip over what he was dressed like last night. He looked completely different. I don't know what I don't. Maybe I'm not skipping over it. He had no shirt on underneath the suit, and then like his hair was doing something crazy. I don't know. He looked. It was strange to see him like that.
Hey, sometimes people. Hey, I feel like the people that have the most interesting draft suits actually end up becoming really good, right? This is like a trend. Like if you go look at NFL players that have funky show up in funky stuff, like you look at LeBron's draft day like dress where he's just got the really super baggy.
Yeah.
Anybody that wears something funky ends up probably doing well in the league. There's got to be some correlation. I want somebody to come up with a statistic for that.
So
And
I'm
everybody
putting
that was
I'm
dressed
putting a future
poorly,
on Grady Dick, rookie of the year. Then right.
yeah, that was a weird NBA style confuses me. Anyways, I felt like some of the rookies last night were trying too hard, but I thought Jalen Hood-Schifino looked fire. To be
Yeah.
honest with you,
Yeah, he's coming up in just a second. I want to talk about him. Before I move on from Michigan guys, though, two top 15 guys, Hunter Dickinson last year. You lose in the quarterfinals of, I think it was the quarterfinals of the NIT to Vanderbilt after
yes,
holding like an 8-point lead. Didn't make the tournament.
we're under like a minute and a half left. Yeah.
Exactly. Didn't make the tournament. And how does that happen with two top 15 draft picks and Hunter Dickinson on your team?
Well, you have a mid head coach, and then his son decides not to play defense, and that's how that happens. There's also a bunch of other problems with that team. I mean, like you're playing T well too much, if at all, on that team. He was just absolutely terrible for them. They needed Doug to be better than what he was last year, which was just an impossible task for somebody that's as young and small statured as he is, to come in. And I thought he was actually pretty good by the end of the year. It's just a truly dysfunctional roster that needed a Terrence Shannon Jr. on it,
Yeah,
right? And so they kind of got cucked by admissions, and I mean, Michigan fans will sit there mumbling about it, but I think for the better of the program, this year's going to suck. They're going to get rid of Jawan, I believe, after this year and let him go.
wow.
And yeah, I think next year you'll be looking at Michigan hiring one of the better coaches in the country because they do have an athletic department that is willing to spend with the best of them. And as a basketball program, you look around the country, there's not a lot of better basketball programs over the last 15 years than Michigan.
Right. All right, let's move on to I'm gonna say 1A. My favorite player from the Big Ten this year is Jalen Hood-Schifino. I talked about it at nauseum this year throughout the season, and I definitely talked about it this week right before the draft. I think he was the best player that was coming out of the Big Ten. I think he has the best or the most NBA potential. I thought he was the most NBA ready of all the guys in the Big Ten, and I'm not surprised where he went. I'm only surprised when you look at everyone else in the Big Ten and how he went behind two other guys. That kind of surprises me. But going at 17 is not. That's about where he was getting mocked at, anyways. Um, how's he going to do in LA next year? I'm not sure what moves they're going to make over the summer, but how do you think he's going to do?
Well, I think it really honestly depends what his role is going to be next year. Because I think there's two situations. There's the situation where they re sign Austin Reeves, and then Jalen's role is significantly diminished. Or Austin Reeves goes and gets a $50 million contract somewhere. LA doesn't want to match that. They move people other places, and then Jalen comes in and he kind of gets that Austin Reeves role, where he kind of comes off the bench and he's that secondary ball handler to LeBron. And they kind of put him through pick and roll action with Anthony Davis and LeBron, on the wing. That's something that weirdly enough, I could totally see Jalen having a breakout year like Reeves did, right? Um, and they're very similar players in a way. They're both of them can play point, but both of them can also play off ball. I think obviously Reeves has turned into like a fairly decent knockdown shooter, and that's something Jalen has to work on. But with I think with NBA coaching and an NBA development staff, like that shot is good enough that he can figure it out. And we already know, like, because you're high on him, we both know what he does in the pick and roll. Like,
Yeah.
you saw Indiana when they ran pick and roll with Trace Jackson Davis. Like it was the best set when you got Jalen coming on like with the ball downhill and Trace also attacking. That was Indiana's offense last year almost entirely down the stretch of the season. And he's a guy that's better off ball. Like I think he's more efficient off ball. I saw a lot of people tweeting the efficiency numbers under the tweet of the like, hey, Lakers have selected a 17, Jalen Hishvino. They're like all the negatives. It's
Yeah.
like, guys, he was playing out of position last year. Like
Yeah.
he's not a point guard. He's a combo. He plays both, and he was forced to play pure point as a freshman in a Big Ten, right? And you were forced to start that role halfway through the season after Xavier Johnson's injury. Like he was a remarkable player to start the year, playing off ball, playing with Xavier Johnson. That was when he was actually, I feel, at his most efficient. When he didn't have to go and be that guy and have the ball in his hands at all times. And on this team with the Lakers, there's always going to be another ball handler out there
Yeah.
for him. So I really like this role for him. And he's another guy. He's a 6'5" guard that can switch. And the Lakers desperately needed a 6'5" guard that could switch in the playoffs this year because they were just Austin Reeves just getting cooked. So I like Jalen's defensive potential as well. He's a again bigger guard that can move and it's got a little bit of length to him, and he's savvy too. So I really like his game for the NBA, and I think a lot of people are just really underestimating how important it is to have another pick and roll ball handler on the floor at all times.
I think that in 5 years from now we're gonna look back and people will regret not taking him higher. I think
Mhm.
personally. I don't know. I just loved everything that he did this year. I thought he was instantly just jumped off the TV, and like when I saw him play live as well, he just looks like the most talented player on the floor every time he plays. Every time I saw him play, so I'm definitely cheering for him. I'm a big fan of his, so I'm hoping that he has a good career starting next year. Next was we're gonna move right along. It was Chris Murray. Went a little bit higher than I saw him projected, and he's going to Portland now. He was
Mhm.
one pick away. I noticed this last night. He was one pick away from the Kings. I don't know if the Kings would have taken him as well. That would have been hilarious. I highly doubt they would have, but it would have been great to have them on the same team. But anyway, he goes to Portland. And how's Chris going to do?
I so this is one of those weird situations. I like this for Chris because he's going to be on a team that's going to suck, right?
Okay.
They're going to be bad. I think they're trying to trade Dame. He gets to build a relationship with Scoot Henderson, the number 3 overall pick. Um, he gets playing time, and that's what he needs. Like his brother, got playing time and became a significant player for the Kings, right? He needs playing time for Portland, and I think he'll become that same, like almost the same player. Like, can Chris do what his brother can? Like 75%,
I don't
right?
think
And
he
I,
can
I
shoot the
think
three as well.
I think with an NBA development staff, I think it's there. Like the mechanics are there. His brother's shown that they shoot almost damn the same way. Like
Okay.
it's there. They just he's gotta iron out some stuff. He's got to not rush a shot. It's all most of his stuff is just mentality. And with the right staff and repetition, right, and getting shots up because he's gonna play, it'll be good. So I think this is actually a pretty decent situation for him. It's just a matter of who's he playing with. Like is he running with Dame next year? Are they trading him? Or who are they getting back? Right? Because I
Yeah.
could totally end up trading. Let's say they trade with Miami, and now you're playing with Tyler Hero, Scoot, and now you're that third guy at the 3. I like that situation for him a lot.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch that team grow. They got a lot of young guys, and we'll see. Like obviously, probably I'm guessing within the next few weeks, we'll know what's going on with Dame Lillard. So we'll figure
Yeah.
out what that team's really going to look like and what Chris is going to be able to do. All right, here's a guy that slid. I thought, based on everything that I read, it was Bryce Sensabaugh. He's going to Utah. Um, I I liked Bryce this year. I didn't know that. I'm not an NBA talent evaluator. I didn't know that when I started reading about him that he was going to be or projected to be drafted as high as he was. What do you think about what Bryce did last year at Ohio State, starting off, and then how do you think he'll play out in the NBA?
Funny enough, I think he's a stat stuffer. I've never been a huge Bryce Sensabaugh guy. I felt like he was a guy that was on a losing team and played losing basketball. That was not totally his fault, but he definitely benefited from a situation where they were desperate for somebody to score points, and a lot of times he just shot them out of games.
Yeah,
Right. And it felt like a lot of his like ISO possessions were just wasted offensive possessions for Ohio State. And while he looked good and he put up numbers, I was not really high on him. I personally actually was surprised that he was even taken in the first round. I know he was mocked that high, but I felt like that was just people basing that off of statistics alone
yeah.
and not actually just watching the games.
I felt the
And he's a
exact
guy to
same way.
me.
I was surprised to see him. Like when all the articles I was reading, I was like, really, first round? I was very surprised to see that.
And then I was also surprised that Utah picked him out of all the teams. Like I feel like Utah's always a savvy org that takes players that like are totally underutilized for the teams and makes them better.
Yeah,
And I felt like he was overutilized, if anything. Right? It was like almost the inverse of whatever they do with any of their draft picks, right? Or guys that they pick up, right? Like you think, look at what Lauri Markkanen did for them this year. Like he's a guy who was underutilized in Chicago. They bring him in and they make him better because they give him a bigger role and they give him more confidence or whatever. Bryce Sensabaugh, if anything, needs less confidence. Like he's a guy that's just like he needs to play a role, and I'm not sure he's a role player. And for this Utah team, you needed to pick a player that could learn how to play a role, especially at this pick. And I feel like they went for a home run here, and I'm not sure Sensabaugh is going to end up, even probably playing significant minutes or even having a future with the Jazz. I feel like he's a guy that's going to end up sitting on the bench a lot this year, not really playing a lot, especially if they re-sign Jordan Clarkson, because I know he's not going to be playing next to Jordan Clarkson.
yeah.
And then you're going to watch him sit on the bench for 2 years, then end up in the G League and then moving around. So I I don't like the situation. I think this is the one other situation where I'm like, I don't really like it. The Orlando situation for Jet and this one for Bryce.
I think it might have been even like last night. I had a sense, if you will, that they probably got to that pick and they were like, I don't think we were expecting him to be here still. Maybe I don't know if that played a role in it, and then they were like, this is the best available player, or what they were really thinking at that pick either. But to me, it felt like he went a little bit later than what he was projected, so maybe they weren't even expecting to see him that late.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
I, I don't know. I hate that situation for him on a team that's I don't know. He needs the ball in his hands to be good, and he's on that team. He's not going to have the ball in his hands.
Yeah. All right.
So
We
it's
move
it's
into
just not.
the. Sorry, go ahead.
No. I was just finished.
Okay. I was going to say we move into the second round. Right at the top of the second round. Again, I would say that 1A or 1B as my second or first favorite player is Jalen Pickett this year. I loved him from the minute the season started until all the way to the Big Ten tournament and further. Jalen Pickett, he's going to Indiana. I don't even know. Are you a Pacers fan? Are you excited about this, or are you not a Pacers fan?
I thought he was going to Denver.
Oh, did that get traded? I don't know. Maybe I wrote that down wrong. I'm
I
sorry.
think that got traded to Denver. I'm pretty sure.
I did have that pulled up. But what do you think about Jalen Pickett while I look that up, though?
I'm pretty sure he's going to Denver. I love Jalen Pickett. We Ant and I have this joke we call it booty ball that he
Yeah.
plays, right? And that's the style of basketball he plays. And actually, if he is actually going to Denver, which I'm looking it up
You're
on
right.
the
It's
NBA.com,
funny
just
because
yeah,
I tweeted that last night that booty ball's going to it's mile high booty ball. That's what I said last night.
yeah, mile high booty ball. I love this. I think we'll get to my favorite. My favorite pick is the last pick for situation.
Yeah.
This is my second favorite. I think this is absolutely perfect because A lot of people aren't going to understand this when I say this, but he's the perfect backup to Jokic.
Oh, really?
Yes. So he's not going he's going to play like a point forward position for them,
Yeah.
and he's going to come in off the bench and they're going to play through him. Right?
Hmm.
Because he's a guy who he's still going to be able to. A lot of NBA guards are like skinny, fast, quick guys. Jalen's got all that, but he's also and he's got the booty element, right? He
Yeah.
can back guys down. He's gonna back some NBA guards down, and they're gonna be annoying because then they're just gonna throw Christian Braun and all those guys you saw running off of screens and whatever during the finals for Denver. They're just gonna run those guys around him,
Yeah.
right? And so you have that whole offensive system Mike our coach Malone runs there in Denver, and they're just gonna everything they run for Jokic, they're gonna run him from the high post, right? And they're gonna have him post up as a guard, and they're gonna force other teams to switch a bigger guy onto guards or a smaller guy onto bigger guys and a bigger guy onto their guard so they can guard Jalen Pickett,
That's
right? And
genius.
so this is just a weird offensive thing. And then on the defensive end, he's a dog. So I like this pick for Denver. I think he's going to be fun. I think he'll be in the league for a long time, and he's going to be a guy. I don't think he's ever going to start, but he's totally going to be like one of those rock star bench guys that's always just on a winning team.
That's an interesting take on that, to think about what they can do with their offense. Because immediately when I saw him even just get picked at all, I was like, I wonder what he's going to do to have to change his game for the NBA. But if you the way you're saying it, you're saying the NBA is going to have to change for him, and I love that, man. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because what he does is damn near unstoppable. And look, there were teams they threw their best defender on him, and he still went to town every single time. And he's gonna do that in the NBA too. There'll be tough matchups for him, of course. You throw him up against Golden State. You see what those guys have now. Sticking up maybe like Draymond or something on him in reduced minutes, but he's going to be again, especially against NBA bench guys, a force like that guy. You get a correct matchup going, you get the correct lineup going. He's going to be fun. He's going to be good from minute one in Denver.
I need Steve Kerr coming out after the game saying this is unguardable. I mean, we
Yeah,
can't
that's what he's
guard
going to
this.
say. Yeah, you can't guard that. It's the funniest but like most broken basketball strategy I think I've seen in a long time.
I think Brad Underwood is still having nightmares about it. The next guy that was picked was also from Penn State. It was Seth Lundy. He's going to Atlanta. Um, Great shooter. I loved how he finished the year, especially. He was hitting some big shots. Does what do you think? What do you think's going to happen with him next year? Does he? I don't. For some reason, I don't foresee him having a long career in the NBA. Is that a bad take?
That is a bad take. He's a
Oh,
three and
okay.
D
Tell
wing.
me.
He's a 3 and D wing with length, um, and a guy that I think in a league that just needs shooters. Every team just needs shooters. I mean, he's one of the best jump shooters. He might have even been the best jump shooter in the league last year, in my opinion, outside of Joey Hauser. Him and Joey might have been the best jump shooters in the league, in my opinion, just from takes, like makes and takes wise. I loved Seth Lundy, and I like this pick even more because he's a guy you can just float out there and put next to DeAndre Hunter. You can put him next to Trey Young. You can put him next to
Kobe Buffkin.
any of the other guys in Atlanta, and he just makes that team's floor spacing better. And I like that. He will play, I think, from game one.
Okay, so you actually think that he'll be in the starting lineup before, or maybe not the starting lineup, but
Not
you
in the
think
starting lineup, but he'll be in a significant rotation piece. Yeah.
like before Kobe even, or no?
I think him and Kobe will probably play the same amount of minutes. In fact,
Wow,
yeah.
interesting. All right, last guy. You talked about how much you like this spot for him. It's Trace Jackson Davis. I think, and I said this on Tuesday when I released the last podcast. I think teams were. I don't know if this is true or not. He's an older guy. He's played longer than some of these other guys, but he is a freaking really good player, and I'm surprised. I talked about Bryce sliding a little bit. This was a ginormous slide in my eyes. I can't believe some of the players that got taken in front of him. But he does still get drafted, the second to last pick of the draft. by Washington and then traded to, I believe, Golden State. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yes, sir.
So Trace is in the league. He did get drafted. He would have got signed anyways if he didn't get drafted. But what do you think about that placement? Golden State getting much older. They drafted one of the older players. How do you think he'll do next year?
He's perfect. This is the perfect pick. He could not have ended up in a better situation, in my opinion. He could not have. Like this is a franchise that desperately needs somebody that is a backup center,
Yeah,
right? And they already have the depth lineup, and more importantly, he's a guy that can play make from the center position. When you have one of the best off ball running around point guards in the entire league,
yeah,
right? Like you have Steph Curry,
right.
like he doesn't need the ball, right? And so you look at a team that Draymond's getting older. Looney needs help, right? Because a lot of times he was just either getting in foul trouble or just gassed, right? Because they didn't have anybody, and they wanted James Wiseman to be that guy.
Yeah.
And James Wiseman's not that. Trace is going to come in from minute one. He's going to play a role, and he's not going to have to score. I don't even think he has to put up a shot. But his defense, his rim protection, his versatility on defense, being able to guard multiple positions, and being small and quick as he is, he's like almost the perfect complement on that team. And then you add in the fact you're putting him on a team that just develops shooters. Like
Mm-hmm.
they take guys that have funky shots and turn them into good shooters. Like would it surprise me if Trace is taking corner threes by the end of the next season? No, it would not. And so this is a situation where he could totally go from third to last pick of the draft to starting in the next 3 years for
And,
Golden State and being an important guy in that rotation. And honestly, like you're going to see some of the basketball heads, and I'll let you talk here in a second, but you're going to see a lot of the basketball heads. Like you're going to like Kevin O'Connor, any of the analytic nerds, right? They're gonna love him from like day one in Golden State because he's gonna come off the bench. He's gonna give them good pick and roll. He's gonna set good screens. He's gonna be there on defense at all times, help side, whether it primary defender on a five or playing the four for them. And he's gonna pass the ball really well.
yeah.
And so all those numbers are they're gonna jump off the page from minute one. And you put around some of the better players in the league, like the Klay Thompsons and the Steph Currys, and now you have Chris Paul running pick and roll with him. He's going to be put in a position to succeed from day one.
And he's on that, like you said, you made this point as well, but on a team that every time I think of Golden State, everyone knows Steph Curry, everybody knows Klay Thompson, what they're going to do. But in the playoffs, it seems like they're a team that out of nowhere, just some random dude will get 25 or get 18, and you're like, where the hell did that come out? I mean, anyone that can make Draymond Green a scorer in playoff games and they can utilize him correctly.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you're right. Trace is going to fit in really well there. It's going to be a good fit for him.
Everybody on that team shares the ball.
Yeah.
And last year, Trace's best, like honestly, the best thing he did last year, and the most improved thing, was sharing the ball,
Yeah.
right, and having the ball in his hand and being the guy that they played through, that IU played through last year, and he gets to do that again in Golden State as a rookie, right?
Yeah.
Because they're going to put the ball in his hands and run Curry around circles around him, and then he just has to throw the ball correctly, and Curry's going to get a 3-pointer, and he's going to look like a genius.
That's awesome. I love it, man. I think it's a great pick too. All right, before I let you go, few guys that did not get drafted. I'm just gonna have you pick one of them and talk about maybe which one you think is going to be the most impactful going forward. Maybe even the next couple years. You already mentioned Joey Hauser, and this is all stuff that I pulled up right before we started recording. So if this stuff is incorrect, then maybe you can correct me or someone else can. But he got signed by Utah. Matthew Mayer by Houston. My guy, Chase Audige, is going down to Miami. Caleb McConnell, OKC. And then I also listed Marcus Carr and Liam Collins just for fun because they used to be in the – or I'm sorry, Liam Robbins because they used to be in the Big Ten. But any of those four guys that I just mentioned, I might have missed a guy or two there. Like I said, I did it right before we started recording. Are any of those guys like someone you're circling to keep an eye on for the next couple of years?
Well, you forgot Brandon Podziemski, the Illini legend, Brandon Podziemski.
I don't remember
He's
him.
like, yeah, so he was a bench guy for the Illini, and then he transferred to Santa Clara, and then averaged like 20 points per game, and got drafted in I believe the late first round, early second.
Oh, did he? Oh,
Yeah.
okay,
So he
okay,
was
because he wasn't a current Big Ten player. That's why I didn't mention. I see what
no,
you're
he
saying.
wasn't. Yeah, I'm just making fun of you adding Marcus Carr because you're
Okay,
bad
yeah.
Marcus
I
Carr. You
also
got,
didn't. I also didn't mention Amani Bates did get drafted as well, former
that's
Michigan
true.
State
Yeah,
player.
former Michigan State commit.
Yeah.
Um, Michigan State legend, Imani Bates.
Yes, definitely.
I personally, out of the three guys that were left over, I kind of like the Chase Audiche to
Yeah,
Miami thing. I think that makes sense. Like Miami loves the guys that are either defensive first or 3-point shooters.
yeah.
And Audiche is defensive first. Now they gotta fix his shot because my God, it, my eyes bleed every time he shoots the ball. I have this joke. We have no idea how the ball goes in anytime he shoots it, but it goes in.
Don't talk about my
Um,
boy like that, man. His shot's fine. He made enough shots.
no, his shot is terrible, but it goes in. So if they can like kind of fix it, make it a little bit more consistent, he's totally a guy I can see in the league because length for days, bro.
Hmm.
His arms go from here to Timbuktu, um, and and he's such a disruptive defender, and that'll fit right in with the Miami system. And Miami does so well with the undrafted guys.
Yeah,
So I could totally see Chase Audiche being one of those guys. Like, hey, remember Chase Audiche from Northwestern? Well, now he's playing significant minutes in the NBA Finals game for Miami,
yeah,
right? Like Gabe Vincent wasn't Gabe Vincent. He went to Miami and
yeah,
figured it out. Same thing with Max Strus, another guy that played in Chicago, right? So I could totally see Audige blossom into a decent NBA player. I could also totally see him not ever playing a minute for Miami, but it goes both ways.
yeah. I was bummed that he wasn't coming back. I was such a fan of his this year, but he's got to make decisions for him and his family. Um, I do want to wrap it up though. So, Matt, once again, thank you so much for coming on, chatting about these guys that just got drafted, some of the guys that
Thanks for
did
having
not
me.
and got signed. Really appreciate your insight. You got a lot of knowledge about way more about the NBA than I do for sure. Tell everybody what you got coming up, where they can find you once again, and what's going on the rest of this summer for you.
Yeah, so right now I'm out in Utah working in Zion National Park. I'll be out here until about August, and then you can probably catch me and Ant back at it again with the Big Ten Coast to Coast podcast. That's on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll probably be doing one about next week. You can also catch me at the Hoosier Sound if you want to listen to more IU flavored stuff. I'm actually doing a podcast right after this with my guy Nathan and the Indian HQ guys. That'll be up probably either tonight or tomorrow, and that's again on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And then other than that, I mean, just check me out on Twitter.
Awesome,
I'm
man.
I'm
Thank you so
everywhere.
much once again for coming on, and hopefully I can get you back on during actual basketball season. We could talk about what else is going on in the Big Ten once it gets started again.
Absolutely, I look forward to it. Kent, thanks for having me on.
Awesome, dude. We'll talk to you later.
All right, see ya.